Okay, I've got my letter M pretty much cut out. This was my sketch. This is my cutout letter. So let's see what it looks like inked up. Now, one thing I want to mention is that when you first cut out your design, you're going to have to print it several times to get it ready, because this linoleum, when you first get it, has a very slick surface. So with that being said, let's go ahead and put it on the ink pad, and I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to put a piece of newspaper over it so that I don't get ink. I always get ink on my fingers, but they would look even worse if I didn't use a piece of scrap paper on top of the ink pad. And when I lift it up, you can see it's real splotchy looking. My first print, let's see how it's going to look. I make sure I get the corners, the sides, and the middle. Lift it up, and that's not actually very bad for a first print. Usually they're more blotchy than that. But sometimes what I do when I'm first starting is I print it and kind of rub it on the paper, and that takes off some of the slick surface of the stamper that I've made. Like this, I kind of rub it real good, and it kind of dulls that edge, and it gives me a neater print. But I can pretty much see what my design's going to look like. Now, with this, I can decide if I want to add polka dots or stripes, or do I think it has enough cut out. I can pretty much see from that what my design will be. And at this point, I'm going to leave it the way it is. I think if I try it out a little bit, I may end up with some stripes, but let's go ahead to save a little bit of time and print it on this pre-painted paper and see what it looks like. Now, I'm going to add Derica's heart to this design, even though the M has nothing to do with her name. Let's go ahead and see what that looks like when we alternate the patterns. So I'm going to ink up my stamp and see how it turns out. Now, you might notice that I did not space out my paper. Quite often when I'm using white paper, if you remember from a previous lesson, I draw lines and I space out my paper so I know exactly where I'm going to be stamping each one of those prints. But when I'm using pre-painted paper, I don't want to do that, because when I'm finished with that paper that was lined, I want to take my pencil and my eraser, and I want to erase all those pencil marks. I really don't want the pencil marks to show. But if I'm using pre-painted paper, if I actually erase those pencil marks, an eraser mark is going to show, and I don't want that to happen. So it's going to be kind of important for me to line up my stamper very carefully with the edge of the paper so that I have a nice straight line. Okay, I'm going to print. I'm pressing the corners, I'm pressing the sides, and I'm pressing the middle so that I get a nice clean stamp. And there we have my M. I hope you can see the corner of the paper. And then I'm going to go to the heart next. Put it on my stamp pad, put scrap paper over it, press, remove the scrap paper, pick up the stamper, and it's going to go right next to the M. Now, since this paper is not measured out and spaced out, I have to look at it carefully to make sure it's lined up with the top of the paper and with the edge of the previous stamped print. And I'm going to press carefully. Corners, sides, and middle. And there we have a heart. Now that one didn't come out quite as clean. This one has been used many times, and it's getting a little bit weak, but I think you get the idea. I'm going to try my M one more time. And at this point, it'd be a good idea to put a dot at the top of my M so that I don't accidentally print a W by turning it upside down. I'm going to lift it up and line it up with the top of my paper carefully and with the edge of my previous print, and press. Corners, sides, middle. And there we go. So I've got 3 across, and if I were starting my next row, the M would be where the heart is, and I would start my next row with a heart. Let's go ahead and print one and see how it looks. And I have that nice bright color underneath. This one's a little bit more pastel than bright, but since I pre-painted the paper, I don't have to add color to it later. And make sure I get more ink on it this time. And I'm going to line this up with the first print and the edge of the paper, and then press. Since I have ink on my paper, I am using the scrap paper on top of my stamper so that I don't smear the ink from the previous print. And then lift it up, and there we go. My next one will be an M. Now, I hope you're ready to get started on your own design. You will be cutting out both of your designs first. You will be practicing it on a piece of plain white paper. You may have to rub it on the paper a bit to get some of the slick surface off of the safety cut lino before you actually start your design. Once you've got a really clear, good, solid print, then you're probably ready to start on your design. Go ahead and press this one, corners, sides, middle, and then lift it up, and there we go. The beginning of a good print. So thanks, and have a great time with your designs.